It's Simon Keeling here at weatherweb.net. It's Saturday the 12th of September. Thanks again for watching. This is your look ahead video. Now, apologies to those of you watching yesterday. The video ended somewhat prematurely. Thank goodness, many of you might say. But sorry about that. The reason was we've been running some tests on the premium service. And for some reason it chopped the end of that video short. And I just couldn't get back in and do a record for you because we were trying to complete these tests. So my apologies to you. You missed about a minute to a minute and a half. Hopefully it wasn't the most crucial part. But let's hope today's goes a little bit smoother. What I was telling you yesterday actually was about the troughing GFS. Remember that? I was talking about its tendency towards wanting to make too much of troughs. We're seeing some example of that again during the next 10-day to 14-day forecast period. Just going to take you through first of all the GFS charts. This is the operational from weatheronline.co.uk, and what I want to do in this video is show you the way pressure is forecast to build into the week after next. This is the 500 millibar for today. Here's our deep trough across the west of the UK. There is the high that's being centered across Scandinavia. Here's our trough out here. So you've got to imagine just this flow of air here. The winds flow with the geopotential height lines, which are the black lines here. So this is pumping air down here into Europe. It strengthens this trough. It sharpens the trough over the next few hours and days, and that trough actually stays with us into the beginning part of next week. All that accepted, and you notice here, look how then these centres of low heights rotate around each other into next week, become a feature across the UK. This is now Thursday. Thursday is the one we're watching for a real nasty system potentially coming through, a foretaste of autumn, I guess you would call it. And then it wants to try to build heights here. So it's trying to get the heights starting to build in, but with this trough coming into the back here, what it then does is sharpen that secondary trough coming through into next Sunday. But notice, as that trough sharpens, what you do is you get this reciprocated build of heights, because the air pumps up from the southwest, warm air builds the heights up here, so we get a building ridge out here despite still having the trough out here, and then brings the trough through again into the early part of next week. Now that, I believe, is another example of the GFS making too much of these trough features. Notice how it sharpened it so quickly. Look, if we just go back there, watch as I move through, just look how sharp it makes that trough very, very quickly, puts it down into Europe and makes it quite a dominant feature through here, although it does choke it off across the top, which is probably what would happen if that appeared. So it's back to its old trick again. We've got to watch this when we're looking at the GFS operational. This is the pressure charts for the same time. Look, there's our low coming in through this weekend. Again, these charts from Weather Online. There is Monday going into Tuesday. Potential for some very strong winds across the south. Again, something we need to watch and monitor is how this actually pans out on Monday. Has it deepened that low too much? Has it made the winds too strong across the south? If it does, it's something we're going to have to watch with the GFS for winter. And again for Tuesday, look, deepening off that low. Is it doing it too much? Is it deepening that low too much and making it too much of a feature? We're going to need to watch that. It's the first test of this for the autumn. It then clears away to the north, staying basically unsettled. Here's the ridge build, though, down to the south, look into the back end of the week and into next weekend, and then it tries to bring that low back in with the trough that we just saw, and despite it building pressure here and here, so the operational could be up to its old tricks again. But notice the pressure build by a couple of weeks time, and it then reverts to this idea of the pressure building down to the south. And remember, we've been saying about 23rd, 24th for the potential for a pressure build. It may not have the details right, but perhaps the overall story is almost there. Now, continuing this troughing theme, this is the 7 to 10 day mean of the 500 millibar flow. ECMWF on the left, we've got the GFS on the right here. Notice how the GFS is kind of making more of these troughs. It's not so noticeable on today's as it was on yesterday's, but the ECMWF certainly wants to make more of the ridge into this period. So this is from next Saturday through to Tuesday the 22nd, and the ECMWF wanting to build the ridge here keeps the jet across the north of the UK, hence the unsettled conditions, but he's seeing that ridge build towards the south. Now, if we look at the various different longer range operationals, this is the Canadian. All these valid for the same time. So this is for that date we've just seen, Tuesday the 22nd. And notice how the Canadian look builds the heights out here. It's got high pressure building across the UK. Now, next up is the ECMWF. And ECMWF, 22nd again, it's the same date. Yes, we saw the ridge build, didn't we, down towards the south. But look, it wants to go with the idea of low pressure to the north, keeps the westerly flow in, doesn't really want to build pressure properly until this ridge comes in around the 23rd or the 24th. But it is, again, sticking with the story of pressure building off towards the north. And then the, off towards the south. And then the GFS Ensemble, it wants to go for a pressure build. Yes, it's still got the idea of a weak trough in here, but it's trying to get this ridge built in, so it wants to see the pressure build too. So this overall idea of the pressure building into the week after next is one that is starting to be seen in operationals. You've got to be careful that you're not just, kind of filling in the gaps on long range forecasts because it agrees with what you've said. And I don't think this one is. This is more a case of it trying to pick out what's being shown on those forecasts. So it's interesting to pick out where this is heading, and it certainly looks as if it's headed in the direction of the pressure build. And if we just look at the cluster maps, this is again from weatheronline.co.uk from our colleagues there, and these are the cluster maps which basically compare clusters of the ensemble members and puts them into percentage terms. This is GFS Ensemble again, so you have to bear that in mind, that it's still the GFS, but using the ensemble model. This is the prediction for next Friday, and you notice how all of them basically have the idea of the low pressure off towards the north or the northwest. They're all in broad agreement that that's the way this goes. Then go forward a few days, Monday the 21st, and notice pressure has built on these clusters. So it's going with the idea of proper pressure, high pressure over us, about 45%. Add another 25 for the ridge. So effectively you've got 70% of clusters there trying to go with the idea of a ridge of high pressure being in. Even 25% of the clusters go with the idea of a general build in pressure. And then onto the 300-hour forecast, which goes to Thursday the 24th. And on this one, look, 30% have a proper high, 25% have the high off towards the east, but again a proper high. So we're getting there a 55% agreement with the idea of the high being in. And notice how all of them actually have the higher pressure south or west or east, somewhere close to the country. And that gives us a fair amount of confidence. And then the 372-hour, which goes to Sunday the 27th, so 2 weeks tomorrow, that has the idea, look, it's got 35% with a high out here, 35% high there, 15% high over us, 15% high to the southwest. So this overwhelming majority going for the idea of the high build the week after next. So it's going to be interesting over the next few days just to see how that develops, because if it does happen, we had got the idea of the high build coming in and really staying there as a high build until the latter stages of September, early stages of October. Be interested to see how this one develops. We actually got low confidence on it, but it was what our comparison years for similar El Nino showed. This was September. These are the means of the 500 mile heights for September, and it had the idea of higher heights across much of the country. Trough basically down towards the south coast, central parts of Europe, with an east and northeasterly flow, more unsettled conditions in the south than in the north. That was the overall pattern in those Septembers, and it kind of kept that pattern going into October's as well, and went with the idea of I think this would be a dominant high at the beginning of October, but certainly a breakdown mid to late on in the month. So our narrative is kind of there, and certainly the reasons for our story are there. If it goes wrong, then hey, it goes wrong. That's the fickle world of weather. But certainly at the moment, the evidence is pointing to this idea of that pressure build, and that's what we've been going along with private clients just at the moment. Okay, I'll leave you with that for now. Whatever you're doing, thanks again for watching. I'll keep you informed about how we're going with WeatherWeb Premium. There'll be loads of extra stuff on there that you'll be able to get access to. But for now, whatever you're doing, thanks again for watching. Keep the sun shining, and bye for now.